Hi, and welcome to SCW, the wrestling channel here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comments section. Please like and share the video as well. Answering your questions in the wrestling community. Once again, here is Ask SCW for you right now here on YouTube. If you want to be involved, leave the hashtag AskSCW with your question. You can do that in the comments section here on YouTube, or you can see on your screen where you can follow me and add those questions right now. So we're going to get straight in with this week's questions, and they're coming from Twitter and from Instagram. So our first one this week is coming from Dan the Man Williams, and he asks, where do you think AEW goes here after Double or Nothing? Great question to kick us off, and I have to say we have to touch on AEW's Double or Nothing very quickly first. Really good show. I think it was a good pay-per-view. I really enjoyed it. Certainly a lot of entertainment value within this show. I would say that about 4.5 hours, or roughly whereabouts, is slightly too long for what I want for a pay-per-view. Maybe we could have had a little bit less of the filler, but I do feel that when you look at all the good moments that were going on throughout the show, it was a really good show. The Stadium Stampede was spectacular. I thought the Casino Ladder match worked really well, and I think they could do this on future years. I think that it works better than the Battle Royal they did last year. I think that when you look at it, the championship matches for the AEW World Championship and the Women's Championship matches, very good as well. The TNT title makes history. I do think that match went slightly too long for my liking, but if you look at the way that the match was put together, I think it was very strong. So there's a lot of good things that come from that show, but like you say, where does AEW go going forward from here? Now, the first and foremost we have to look is the World Championship picture with Jon Moxley. It looks like that Brian Cage has come straight in and is going straight into that championship picture. He has got the world title opportunity. The only thing we need to learn from this is how the world title opportunity is going to work. Does he get it immediately? Can he choose? Is it like a Money in the Bank but in AEW? Time will tell, and we will have to wait and see. We've obviously got new number one contenders for the Tag Team Championships. The Best Friends, of course, winning on the buy-in, beating Private Party. So it looks like from there we are going to get them against Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. The question is with Hangman being away for so long, same as like Nyla Rose was, is it right now to change the belts? I think you can freshen it up a little bit, and you can get the tag teams to get use of that tag team division again, because it felt for a long time with Adam Page not there that it almost felt like the tag team division was kind of just going through motion. So for me, I think it's the right time to change those belts, even if you don't break up Omega and Page just yet. I think it could be a starting block for what could be the inevitable for those two to come down the line. And maybe by the time we get to All Out, maybe fans are back in some capacity. We don't know at this stage, but I think you would start booking and looking to try and get the Kenny Omega Hangman Page match together. Hangman to go to that fully fledged heel turn and see what they can. But I think they want to do that in front of fans, and I think that maybe that's why that could be dragged out a little bit further still. The other one I want to touch on is something, and of course I don't know where they're going to go necessarily, so I can only give you my hunches of what I would predict and what I would perhaps look to do. I would start the friction with the Inner Circle. I think the time is there to start putting the cracks in for these guys. They've already done slight teases when we've had the Bubbly Bunch, where Sammy won the dance-off and Jericho was a little bit jealous of it. I think it's time to start that rivalry, the cracks to start there. And I think for Proud and Powerful as well, for Santana and Ortiz, in my opinion, I think they are stronger as just a tag team going in the tag team division. Yes, they've got these high-profile moments. They've been in a pay-per-view main event, so you might think, well, Steve, that's stupid what you just said. Yeah, it's a great spot for them to be in this stable, but they're almost like the weak link of the stable, and this tag team is one of the best tag teams in the world. They should be fighting for tag team championships, and it feels like that it's almost an afterthought for them. They're just there to do Jericho's dirty work, and it feels, for me, I think it's time to put the attention on them. They've got the rub of being in the Inner Circle. Now it's time for them to go on and become, attempt to become tag team champions. And I think that they can have great matches with like Best Friends, and we've seen with the Young Bucks as well. So there's plenty for them to do in that tag team division as well. Private Party, the list is endless, and who knows, the Revolt might come in at some stage, and you could say it's the right time for the Revolt to come in and have that tag team match with the Young Bucks, build that for All Out. That is a potential as well. But going back just to the Inner Circle very quickly, I'd keep Jake Hager with Chris Jericho, so he still has that backup in some form of the bodyguard, but I would have Sammy Guevara go. As I love him being that cocky shit heel, I want to see that maybe a babyface turn for him. He's really got potential to be a big star in the company. Everything he does is very he's an MVP with a lot of his segments that he does. So those are some of the things that I would probably put into motion going forward. But it'd be very interesting to see what AEW actually does. I think that one of the other telling stories or question marks you could have would be Brody Lee, where to go. That Lance Archer as well. Would Brody turn his attention to Cody? Maybe he could go for the TNT title instead, because it feels that Brody wants that power, that prestige, and the championship is what's going to do it. But then you've got lineups of MJF who probably now would look at Cody and think, well, maybe we can revisit that feud because, well, Cody has something that MJF just might want. If he's not going for the world title right now, then maybe the TNT title would be the place to go. So there's lots of questions there, and I'm sure that when we get to Dynamite, we will start getting some answers. But yeah, we will tackle more with the women's division later in the show, so do stick around for that. Headlock Talk podcast of our next question for us now. Brian Cage wins the Casino ladder match, spoiler alert, and will presumably make a challenge to Moxley on Dynamite this week. While certainly a big get for AEW, is it too early for him to challenge, and why? Use Brody Lee as a reference point. Well, do you know what? 100%. This is something I touched on the predictions video with Brody Lee, and I think it's the same with Brian Cage as well. You want to put them in a position of where you kind of want to push them, and you want them to feel main event and important, but to be coming straight in and then going for the World Championship, it makes the rest of your roster look a bit weak because it's just coming and immediately got into that picture. It's almost a bit rushed as well. You want to see a build towards a challenger going towards that championship. I'm going to use WWE here for the reference because I think it's a relevant reference and it's quite topical as well. Bobby Lashley is literally going through the same thing right now. He's got like a 2-week push. He's going in now for a championship match against Drew McIntyre. He's probably going to lose that match as well. Where does he go from here? He seems a bit lost. You mentioned Brody Lee, almost the exact same point there. He's coming to AEW, the Exalted One, far too quickly. He should have been building for about 3 to 6 months to go into that championship picture. Now, where does Brody Lee go? I mean, we touched on the last question. Maybe just because he wants power and gold, he can go for the TNT title. But you almost feel like that main event is gone now, and you don't feel that. Where does he go from here? Is he going to get that potential to be in that position again? Or does he become a mid-carder from this point onwards? Cage could go through the same thing, and he's just been in the company for minutes. We're not even talking weeks or days. It's just minutes. And you could ruin what you can have as a big potential star here. I hope, we don't know exactly when the challenge is going to be and how it's going to be laid out. I hope that this is something that almost is like a Money in the Bank, not to necessarily copy WWE, but this is now where we've got 4 months to try and build the guy up. Maybe it's the title match for All Out, and then we can build towards something and Cage can show himself to be that monster. And by the time we get there, maybe it's the right time for Moxley to drop the belt. I love the combination with Cage and Taz. I mean, Brian Cage, he's a machine, and, Taz was a human suplex machine. So they kind of have that thing where they can go together. And I feel as well for Cage that the best way to start would be a feud with Darby Allin as well. Taz has had that bit of altercations with Allin, so it would kind of work for me to start off there and build towards a pay-per-view. But yeah, your point is taken massively on here. I do feel that it can be too much too soon. I want to see someone built for that role, built for that position. And I mean, you even look at the mid-card. Archer as well is now lost in the mid-card championship area. Does he then remain in the mid-card? We don't know how it's going to kind of work with the TNT title yet. Is it going to be something that's literally, it's the title underneath the main event that's going to work and solidify and make you that main eventer? Or is it something that's going to get lost in the shuffle in the middle of the card? I've got a funny feeling AEW is probably going to go with the first option of those two. They're not going to let it be like WWE, where it's like the United States Championship, where it's forgotten for months and you even forget who's holding it from time to time. I think it's going to be something that's going to be held with prestige. So hopefully it will be no damage on those sort of guys. But your point totally taken there, and I 100% agree it can be too much too soon, depending on how it's booked. Next question comes from Submission Specialist, like that username. Who deserves the bigger push right now, Darby Allin or Sammy Guevara? Well, both deserve a big push, and both are going to be big-time players in AEW for years to come. They stand out, and that's what I really like about them. But to give you a solid answer to your question without beating around the bush, Sammy Guevara is the guy right now who deserves that main event push, and of the two, first and foremost. He is an MVP in almost everything he does, most segments. I found him thoroughly entertaining throughout the entire time of Dynamite so far. With his work with Chris Jericho, they can build a breakup, as I said earlier in the video, for that to give him that run, that push towards the main event. I think Sammy Guevara is potentially got the goods to become the top Latin star in the world, let alone just in AEW. I think WWE have got obviously top stars. Obviously, the current one is Rey Mysterio, but you look at like Andrade, Angel Garza is someone that's got that potential to definitely be there because he's got the the gimmick as well. But Sammy, there's something about this guy. And I think that it can be something that WWE can haunt to think that they didn't sign him earlier because Sammy Guevara, I think, has got the tools to be the main guy. I would start putting the seeds in to split up the Inner Circle now. Sammy Guevara to be pushed to the top. As I mentioned in the last question, I think Darby Allin's role right now is probably first and foremost going to be putting over Brian Cage. I think that Darby Allin is definitely could work himself towards maybe the TNT title. I think his defining moment of what will push him and make him over actually to give an answer for Darby Allin is when he finally beats Cody. It's that guy he just can't beat. He gets a little bit closer each and every time and it does push him further up the ladder. No pun intended after just being a ladder match just last night. But you look at it and say there's still a while to go for Darby, and you can't really build both at the same time. I think MJF is definitely building his way towards the top of the card really well. I think Sammy could do it of that younger talent on a face perspective if and when he breaks from the Inner Circle. He could even do it though as a heel because to be honest, this cocky heel that we've got from Sammy is just gold. So maybe if it's not broke, don't fix it. There's no necessary need to change him to babyface. Maybe he's someone who kicks Chris Jericho out of the group and the Inner Circle becomes like, him, Hager, and Jericho becomes the face at this point because, Jericho can play the face, babyface role very well also. So there's lots of different dynamics you can do it. But of those two, I would go with Sammy Guevara right now. I think he's the one that's definitely in the lead of those two of getting to that main event status and championship run. But both of them, don't mark my words, in the next 5 to 10 years, they've got great careers ahead of them and both will be main event players. Next question comes from Get Your Wrestling Podcast. Is Matt Hardy the king of cinematic matches? Yes, is the short answer for that. He's certainly the most experienced as well. And, throughout his career, he's had many great cinematic matches where we've gone from the deletion matches back in Impact Wrestling. A lot of them were golden to watch and definitely put a lot of eyes back on Impact Wrestling at a time where they were perhaps quite low on viewers. And, it's kept some of them fans throughout since as well. So, he'd done a great thing for Impact Wrestling at the time. Going into WWE and getting the chance to do it with Bray certainly was a one-time deal and was over at the time. And you do feel that with the pandemic that's going on, there's definitely perhaps been an influence of WWE to go back down that road to do some of those matches as well. Now the fact we've got one now in AEW with him as well, and we've had some quite cinematic stuff just in general about Hardy. It's been very good. I think this Stadium Stampede was kind of like a cross between, yes, it was cinematic, but it kind of felt like a match as well. It was very well put together because it had that feeling of that match was happening as it was going on without it having just necessarily just like we're watching a movie. So this was really done very tastefully and done very well. I must admit, the Laken reincarnation at first, I did feel slightly uncomfortable this particular time with the Stadium Stampede with Ortiz and Santana, but when it kind of delve into where Matt Hardy was changing his gimmicks, showing he was perfectly fine underwater, the fact that he was, giving his, version 1 gestures and stuff and coming up and, he made a lot of fun of his moments in the match. The fact he's always got those one-liners as well, and just the gimmick in general, the broken brilliance of Matt Hardy has always been entertaining. And I do feel that bar his debut in AEW, I think that a lot of the stuff of his gimmick has always been golden. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next with the gimmick, because I do think that he's someone that could have an interesting role to play in Impact Wrestling. And I think that maybe, we're talking about futures of where AEW goes from here. I think maybe Lance Archer would be an interesting feud to watch with them two and see if they can go into like a broken domain, or will we continue with the Inner Circle? There's so many questions that can happen. But Matt Hardy definitely, I have to agree, he's the king of cinematic matches, and certainly he's always got a bit of his own twist and flavour to add in what's going on around him. It's not just the match, it's Matt's charisma and his pure brilliance that helps elevate those matches even further. Next question from Tire World Order. It says last one, but that means we have a couple more to come later on. But because we're talking AEW, I thought we'd add this one in first. Hikaru Shida just won the AEW Women's Title, Pick one person you want to see a feud with next and why. Congrats to the new champ. Long may she reign. Long may she reign indeed. You know, it was the right move to do this. I mean, you look at it, that she's just been on a roll in 2020. Everyone has got behind her. Everyone, week by week, her popularity is growing. Strike the iron when it's hot. It's something WWE needs to learn with their superstars, because literally here, we've got the champion at the right place, the right time. Yes, it would have been better in front of fans, but you know what? We're just as happy watching from home, because, I mean, most of the time it's only 10, 15,000 that see it live anyway, and the rest of the hundreds of thousands or millions are watching from home anyway. So I think it was the right time, the right place. As for an opponent, Britt Baker would have been the one I would have picked for you today, had she not got that bad injury. But it just feels to me that she's not going to be able to compete anytime soon. Nyla Rose is potentially a rematch that you could see happen, but just from natural selection, Chris Statlander is the one I would go with, just purely because she has been built up the best for a championship run, or certainly contendership at this point. I think that that's a likely destination that they could go down, a face versus face kind of match. I'm not really the biggest fan of Statlander, I must admit. Just purely, it's mainly the gimmick. It's not her. I mean, she's perfectly fine in the ring, but I'm not such a big fan of the gimmick. But I do think that them two could put some good work together, and that would be the one opponent I would pick first for Shida. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they'll do and how they'll build the women's division going forward now that Shida is the world champion, because they're going to need the heels to be quite strong going forward. Ty, once again, and a very important question, this one. In the light of the tragic news of Hana Kimaru's passing, what can the internet wrestling community do to start cultivating a more healthy environment for us all? This is the most important question this week, without question, despite the fact of entertainment of stuff that we've had with wrestling. It's awful with what's happened with Kimaru, with her passing. She was 22 years old. Cyberbullying is not cool. It's not nice. And look, a lot of people in the wrestling community have opinions of what goes on in wrestling, and I like to think a lot of the time, even when they're writing things that are negative, they are writing negatively towards creative of what's going on. But for people to actually write to Kimaru and actually write and saying she should die and stuff like that, and writing really nasty things, actually targeting that person, you don't deserve to be on social media. You should have your account taken away from you. And I actually think that these social media's platforms need to do more. It's just my opinion. I think that they should really keep an eye on people that are writing stuff towards the people, writing nasty comments. It's not on. It's not okay. And I think the only thing that we can do as a community is, if we see it, we should report it immediately. And we should try and make sure those accounts are not actually getting the glory that they want. Social media is something that is a platform that should bring people together. We should all be celebrating the fact we've got wrestling at the moment, or whatever you enjoy, whether it's music, whether it's sport of any sort, a movie, whatever. We should be celebrating of the things that we enjoy together. If we've got something that's constructive as criticism, yeah, by all means, share it. That's not a problem. But make sure you're clear in your direction of what you're sharing. Don't be so nasty towards the people themselves, because look, we're all human at the end of the day. We've all got feelings, and there are sadly, it's a minority. Let's be fair, it's not everybody, but there are some people, unfortunately, with distasteful thoughts and comments that are not welcome. And my personal opinion, if you've not got nothing nice to say in that way, or you've not got something constructive to say, then maybe social media isn't the place for you. But I think that this is a very important question. I'm glad it's been brought up. Rest in peace. It's very tragic what's happened there with Hana Kimaru. And, it's just such a shame. She was 22 years old, and, a life ahead of her. And, hopefully, people will be kind to each other, because, what else is there? The hard-hitting wrestling show with our next question. With AJ Styles permanently in SmackDown, does that change your prediction as Daniel Bryan winning the IC title? Great question, and thank you for bringing it up, because it was from a previous video of mine predicting the Intercontinental Championship Tournament. And yes, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the video, but you're welcome to go and check it out. Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles was my final, and yes, Daniel Bryan was my pick at the time to win the belt. I loved Daniel Bryan's passionate speech about how the fact he wanted that title to become the workhorse title and mean everything within the company. And I believe that he would be a worthy champion, but now AJ Styles is permanently on SmackDown. I kind of felt with the brand-to-brand invitational, we could get the question marks of what happens if he wins the belt, but maybe he falls in the final hurdle in the final. Now, yes, I changed my prediction. AJ Styles, I do think, will come in and win the belt. I do think AJ, rumoured, is meant to be there to actually replace Roman Reigns' role within the company this meantime. So, I mean, there is a chance that AJ Styles gets to the final and still loses and moves on to the main event scene with maybe it's Braun or Bray who holds the belt at that point. But I think AJ Styles would do a great job as IC champion. And yeah, I mean, for me personally, having them two as a program all the way to SummerSlam, I think would be gold. They would have great matches. They're what the Intercontinental Championship represents. You can't go wrong with either. But yes, I will now say that AJ Styles is now my pick to win the tournament. Next question comes from Mike, Italian Habs Mike. Do you think at TakeOver they will finally put the NXT Women's Title on Io Shirai? She's the best female wrestler in NXT and the time is right. Charlotte as champ isn't helping with ratings as they had hoped. Well, it's certainly an interesting point you bring up there, and I agree. I think that she's the best women's wrestler in NXT. Actually, she's probably my favourite women's wrestler around at the moment, if I'm being brutally honest. But I do feel that WWE is going to use Shirai as the loser in this match. I still think they're going to build towards a rematch between Charlotte and Rhea Ripley. And I think that even though Charlotte is not improving the ratings, I think they want to have a lengthy reign as champion. I don't think that it's going to happen just yet. I would love to see Charlotte actually lose the belt on a main roster pay-per-view as well, just purely because, and it's unfair to say main roster, I hate the term, but on a Raw, SmackDown, one of the big pay-per-views, maybe SummerSlam, because you have the chance, say if Rhea Ripley is that person, or even Io Shirai, you have the opportunity to make that star in front of everybody watching. Does everyone watch NXT? According to the ratings on a Wednesday night, not as much as Raw and SmackDown, so clearly maybe they're not going to watch as much on a TakeOver as they would SummerSlam. So I want that star to be made. WrestleMania Rhea Ripley, that stardom was taken away from her. Io, is the timing right? I think potentially it is, but I don't think in WWE's eyes it is. And that's why I think that this particular moment, I see Io perhaps doing the fall. And I actually think that Charlotte Flair is actually going to retain the belt. And I hate to say that because I'm actually on your side. I think it's time for Charlotte to drop the belt, remain on Raw and SmackDown, doing what you do on those shows because you do it pretty well. I'm a fan of Charlotte Flair. I'm open to say it. But I think that it should remain with the NXT women. If the storyline continues, as much as the storyline is quite interesting with Charlotte Flair, if she goes through the whole NXT roster, it is going to make that roster look kind of weak. But then you could say at the end, the person that wins the belt is going to end up being the mega star. But as I say, at the moment, whether it be Rhea or Io, I'm not sure. But I do feel at this moment, I think in your house, at this second, I think Charlotte will retain. Noob and Co. with our next questions for us now. Who is truly the hardest working woman in WWE, Asuka or Charlotte Flair? Question 2, will the next Mae Young Classic will have focus on women's tag team wrestling or singles competition, and who will be in it? And what is your favourite match this year so far? So right, first and foremost, let's go with I think probably the first one you've asked there, the hardest working woman in WWE right now. Well, Asuka and Charlotte have both been doing more than double duty, so both are really kind of on the same level. But I would have to just give the edge to Charlotte Flair at the minute, purely because she's working all 3 shows. She's working Raw, NXT, and this week she has been on SmackDown the last 2 weeks as well. So right now, Charlotte gets it, but Asuka on the road to WrestleMania was actually probably the hardest working woman at that point. And I would say that both of them have done as much hard work as each other amongst that. But of course, that's what we see on camera. Of course, behind the curtain, we don't know. There's a lot of people who are putting in a lot of hard work in WWE to either improve as performers, to get themselves better positions on the card. So, I mean, it's hard to say who truly is the hardest working woman. But from a television standpoint, who's been given the most roles and stuff like that, both have been given strong. But I would just give the edge right now to Charlotte Flair as she's working all 3 shows. As for the Mae Young Classic, I've got no idea. I'm going to be first thing I'm going to say, no idea. But I love your idea of tag teams because the tag team division in women's wrestling right now in WWE is actually a little bit weak, and they've broken up most of the tag teams. So I would love to see that, do like an 8-woman team 8 tag teams rather than you know, maybe the 32 women stuff that they've done previously, or even a 16 women singles tournament. It would be interesting to see how they do it, or even just to mix it up. Why not? Let's just have some fun with this. Have it start off as tag teams, and then teams break up and do singles, you know, to make the ultimate Mae Young Classic winner. I don't know. There's lots of different ways you can do it. There's certainly some NXT women's stars that you could do that could be quite helpful being in there, because you've got NXT UK as well. The question of doing a Mae Young Classic though at this moment with the pandemic. Can you get all the talent that you want in position to do those shows? I'm not so sure of top female talent that is out of contract at the moment as well with other companies. So it would be interesting to see who could be brought in for certain positions. But we have seen some shocking names being brought in before from different companies that you didn't think would turn up, even if it's just a one-off. So it would be interesting. But it's a great question you bring up, and I would like to see a tag team one. I think that would be a great shout to do. I think it's an awesome idea, and it perhaps would improve the tag team scenes on certainly with NXT going forward, and perhaps those teams can push on to become, you know, on the WWE's Raw and SmackDown, challenging Alexa Bliss and, of course, Nikki Cross as well. Your last question, what was my favourite match of the year so far? Well, I must admit, I have loved the cinematic matches. You know, the Stadium Stampede is awesome. Same with the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse. Those are definitely top contenders, but I want to give you an actual wrestling match, something we saw that was in front of fans and stuff like that earlier this year. And the one that stood out for me is definitely from Revolution AEW, would be the Tag Team Championship match between Kenny Omega and Hangman Page against the Young Bucks. I just felt from start to finish it was flawless. It was an incredible story, incredible tag team match. Had the fans gripped as well, and I think that's when you get those long, lengthy matches. Works really well when you've got those fans there. It really grips them in. For me, I was like, you know, jaw dropped from a tag team standpoint, and for me, that's the candidate right now for match of the year. I really enjoyed that one. It stood out. From other potential just candidates as well, New Japan Pro Wrestling, I really enjoyed the Wrestle Kingdom matches they had. I think that, you know, Kota Ibushi had two incredible matches. His match with Okada particularly stood out for me. You know, absolutely incredible. So yeah, that would be another one from there. From a WWE point of view, I would probably say actually a surprise choice, just purely because of the fact that not necessarily being the best match, but the fact it had fans, it had that fun feel about it, and just coming fresh off the Stadium Stampede, I actually enjoyed the Royal Rumble match between Roman Reigns and King Corbin. Probably not the best thing to say on YouTube, but yeah, I actually thought that was a good match as well from a WWE standpoint. No, as a full-on answer, I'm going to go with AEW. I'm going with the Bucks, Omega, and Page. I thought it was awesome. Big Chakra with our next question for us now. The Miz and Morrison combo was entertaining, but I feel Miz's character is getting stale. He's clearly very talented though. Would you change anything about Miz's character? Well, I must admit, I love the combo with him and John Morrison as well, and I'm very tempted to throw out a hey hey, ho ho, because I absolutely love what they're doing, but you can see the cracks are beginning to appear with these two. They're throwing each other under the bus, and it all seems to be since Miz lost them tag team championships. I do wonder if Miz is being slightly punished for what happened at WrestleMania and the fact that Roman Reigns is not around, but we won't go into too much depth. I have covered that on previous episodes here of Ask SCW, and you can go back and check those out if you want to go for that bit of detail. But what I would turn around and say is that I don't think the Miz's character is necessarily stale in my opinion, but I do think that it needs to be booked with more credibility. The guy has been in the company for so many years. He made the Intercontinental Championship relevant. I'm shocked that he's not gone for it in this tournament. I think he would be perfect to go and get that record, Intercontinental Championship reign and give it back the prestige that it had. And I think at some stage he will be going back for it. I think the Hacker is going to be involved in breaking up the Miz and Morrison at some stage. I think more clues are going to be given as we go towards Backlash and what's going to come thereafter. So I do think we're going to get some change with Miz and Morrison. But I want to keep Miz as the heel of the two because Miz's best work is a heel. I do feel that Miz was really badly booked when he had the face run against Bray Wyatt. So from there, like I say, it's not necessarily the character that needs the change for me, but it's the credibility. It's the strength in Miz's character. The Miz back in 2010, when he won the Money in the Bank and the WWE Championship, he found a way to win. He was the coward heel, and he was a good way of doing it. And I think he just needs to learn to find that way to win again. And I think that is the key that's missing in that Miz character. Because a promo, he's awesome. Whether he wants to do something comedy-wise, whether he wants your attention, whether he wants serious, he can do it all. And maybe we just need a bit more of a serious Miz, and we need some credibility, even if the times he wants to be a coward. he finds a way to get through it and he gets the W. I think those are the ways that you improve The Miz. And one last thing, just because we were touching on John Morrison, I would make him the babyface, because I think even though he's kind of got that kind of Anchorman style humour, I think you can make that work as a babyface as well. I think that John Morrison would work quite well as a babyface, even in the sort of style of his gimmick, but just slightly toned more fan friendly. It could work in the current scale of WWE. I think John Morrison is leaps and bounds improved from when he was in the company before. He's done great work in Lucha Underground, Impact Wrestling, and in Mexico and AAA in his time in between. So yeah, I think John Morrison would be a great babyface, and those two could have a great feud going into SummerSlam. We'll have to wait and see if that would actually come about. Next on Ask SCW Ty, World Order is back, and we're going Impact Wrestling. Give your thoughts on Chris Bay. Should he be getting a title shot so soon? Is he the right opponent for Willie Mack? What is his character supposed to be? Are Impact doing enough to introduce him outside of the ring? And you also want me to fantasy book him to Slammiversary. Well, very interesting stuff there. I mean, Chris Bay, what I'm going to say first off is, what is his character supposed to be? I think he's meant to be the ultimate finesse. Everything is done perfectly. But also he's got that cocky twist of a heel that goes along with what he does perfectly. Is he still being introduced? Yes. Is it kind of a bit of a slow build? Maybe we need, for someone that's going to be going for a championship, we need to know more about this guy sooner. I would agree. But I do feel that we're starting to really see, because at first off, he was kind of almost booked a little bit like a face. He was sort of definitely an in-between, or at worst. He's definitely gone full-on heel these last few weeks. And I think a match with Willie Mack is going to be really good to watch. I really want to see a match of him and Rich Swann. I think that them two would tear the house down. But I do feel that Chris Bay, it's fine for him to be going for the X Division Championship, where we spoke in previous questions earlier on about the World Championship. Yeah, I think it's too soon. It can be damaging. But with Chris Bay in Impact Wrestling, I think it's fine for going the X Division Championship. He's been in there, and he's been going through the division as well. It's not as if he's just turned up and going for a championship run. He's been there for a good couple of months now. He's actually been built okay as well. We've just not seen enough of the character to really sort of have that belief in him at this point. And I think that that's what's missing from Chris Bay. As for a match at Slammiversary, I think Willie Mack is the match. I think that you to do that match would be an interesting way to go forward. I think you just have to keep him winning. I think you need to introduce the character a bit more. I love the fact that he was playing dirty, getting Johnny Swing on his side, manipulating the swing man, to into this feud a little bit. I think the best way to do this as well would be to try and get Rich Swann back if he's good to go. I'm not sure of his fitness at this point, but if you can get the tag team match with them going, maybe you can build then Chris Bay and Rich Swann going into the pay-per-view, continuing with that heel heat going there for Chris Bay, and then you get the X Division Championship match between Bay and Willie Mack at Slammiversary. And I think them two would have a good match. I really do. But it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to be put together. And I do think that his character needs to stand out just that little bit more. I get that he's meant to be the finesse, but I want to be shown why. You can see in ring that he's very good and his technique is very slick. In fact, he kind of reminds me of Isaiah Swerve Scott, actually, from NXT. They're very, very crisp in the work that they do, but I want to see more work from Chris on the mic, and maybe from that I can just get a bit more from the character, a bit more from the guy, and yeah, I believe then maybe if he can pull that off, we might just have someone that I think we could have as the next X Division champion in Impact. Last question this week comes from my good friend, Mr. 1925. With the XFL now bust, obviously Vince will be continuing his grip over WWE Creative. Do you see this as the single most thing in WWE's creative downfall going forward? Ouch. Well, I mean, looking at it with Vince, I mean, he's come up with some great genius ideas over the years. There's no doubt that Vince has been a revelation and is the reason at one point where wrestling has become as big as it has. But yeah, I mean, there comes a point where, there comes a time where you look at it and say maybe some of the decisions that you'll be made is not the captive audience you're trying to get to, and maybe creatively it would be best to give those reins over a little bit. I think my main issue that I have with Vince still being in charge of creative is a lot of the stop-start pushes. That's what I'm not such a fan of, because you see the belief is put in one wrestler, and then within a couple of weeks or a month or something, you see that it was just for a short-term goal to do something, and it doesn't really get anybody over. Like I mentioned earlier on with Lashley, I feel that he's been booked for Backlash to lose and then will probably be forgotten about again. And you sit and think, well, he wasn't being booked that well before. He's had 5 weeks of really good booking, and then all of a sudden he just loses and it's forgotten about. It doesn't really get Lashley over, and it doesn't get Drew any further up the card either. So those are the things that I have a bit of a creative problem with when it comes to what's going on in WWE. And if Vince is in charge of that because he blows hot and cold with some of the superstars, maybe he needs to have a bit more faith with some of the newer talent. You've seen with the Undertaker documentary how much passion and care he has for the Undertaker, and respect, and they've been through everything together over nearly 30 years, and you can understand that. But then at the same time, you sit there and think to yourself, well, I just sit there and think to myself that if you can have that belief in some of the newer talent as well, that would be great. And we don't know. There could be people sitting around the table and just not got the great ideas. I mean, you have to remember as well, there's meant to be like 20-something creative, where I think AEW has like 5 or 6. Less heads the better. Vince has the ultimate feeling with it all, and we can question some of those booking choices that's made, and I just look at it and feel that maybe it is time for Triple H to have more of control, because it feels that fans are definitely more in belief with the NXT superstars and get behind them, and then they're disappointed when they get to Raw and SmackDown. I do wonder though if that's because the casual audience doesn't believe them, like we've discussed previously. You could look at some of them superstars and think, well, they're not quite what the worldwide audience is looking for, where you've got the hardcore wrestling fans that are really into these guys. So there's lots of different ways to look at it, but I don't know if it's going to be the biggest creative downfall. I just that's my pet peeve that I have, is the stop-start with the booking and pushing. I want to see that there's someone that they believe in, and I want to see them push them to the moon. They seem to be doing it with Drew McIntyre, but they just need to, as we've said in previous videos, need to find someone to do that with him. I think that Keith Lee is actually someone that would be great for actually SmackDown to do that as well. But of course, Keith Lee's currently in NXT. But I think he's got what it takes to be one of these superstars for the next 5 to 10 years that could really carry the company. So the sooner to Vince's eyes sees that can happen, that would be a great thing as well. So but yeah, it's an interesting question, and I wish that I had a better answer for you on it. But yeah, it's certainly something creatively WWE needs to look at, is either smalling the team, having more belief with the ideas that's coming in, or they need to be more consistent with their booking of who they're pushing and who they're not for a time period, and they can always come back to those other people at a later date when or if that push doesn't connect with the audience. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching. This has been Ask SCW for you once again here. Hope you've enjoyed the video as always, and I'll see you guys next time here on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please share with a friend. Take care.